Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with Kansas City veteran trumpeter Marcus Hampton. He's gearing up for a new show at KC's Blue Room off 18 and Vine on August 12, 2016. This show, amongst many other things, will feature material from his latest 2014 album called Hampton House of Jazz. He talked to Neon Jazz about growing up in Indianapolis as the nephew of the great Slide Hampton and the cousin of the equally great Lionel Hampton. He also talked about his 21-year career as an active-duty military musician, his time in Kansas City, and many more things. So get to know Marcus and dig this interview, my friends.
Thank you for taking some time out. I appreciate it.
Oh, that's fine.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off here. I always like to get a snapshot of what's going on, but obviously you got a big gig this Friday at the Blue Room. So talk to me about not only this gig Friday, but kind of what's going on with you lately.
Well, lately, I guess you consider it lately. Basically, I'll just sit home every day, man, practice my horn, try to build some chops, to have some endurance, and I try music every day. I'm not doing much more than that because there's not much for me that I want to do,
Talk to me about this gig on Friday. How did the gig come about, and how are you feeling about it?
I feel pretty good about this one and compared to all the ones I have played so far there. Chris was basically responsible for me getting the gig because he knew everybody there more so than I do. And he keeps me in touch at that time. Gregory, my tenor sax player, I asked him to pick me up a rhythm section together compared to the one I had last time. So he done that, and so I got some super players that they're going to be playing on Friday, and I'm very pleased with it so far.
So this gig is going to obviously showcase your 2014 album, Hampton House of Jazz, and I want to I want to ask you about that album. It's a great album. Talk to me a little bit about the inner workings of what went into this album.
It was an album that happened, I think I recorded in 2006 in Denver, Colorado. They have a lot of great musicians and as well as teachers there. And when I moved there, I went to check out the status of everything that was going on as much as I could around there. And I ran to this jazz club downtown in Colorado, Denver, Colorado, that is. And they had this jazz club that I think been established since 1955 called El Chapultepec. It's for a lot of jazz people, even ones that maybe don't live there, but come there to perform. And it's a nice little jazz club. When I went there and I found this club, eventually me and my wife, because we moved from Tampa, Florida at the time, and I found this little jazz club downtown Denver. And I was inquiring about who's who and whatever, and so eventually when I went there to hear a performance, I ran to a guy named Keith Auckland, who's a tenor sax player as well as a teacher in Denver. And sometimes he couldn't make all his gigs, so he gave the gigs to me to play. So that's how I came to be involved with those cats there. And the same token, he'd known a lot of people at the time around there that I didn't know. And I was going to do a recording, and I asked him, could you put me together some guys that we felt could do the recording and make a nice recording. So he did that, and that's how that thing came about. And that was my first album. And all those songs on that, which was about 12 songs, I wrote them all myself because I wanted to have a chance to put my stuff out there, so to speak.
So I'm going to go ahead and go way back in your life here, growing up in Indianapolis. Obviously, you came from jazz royalty, being the nephew of Slide and the cousin of Lionel. But talk to me about growing up in Indianapolis and how you kind of got those seeds of not only jazz but music in your blood.
Well, when I was a little kid, about 7, 8 years old, my father gave me a cornet. And they were so busy, I tried getting their stuff together because none of my uncles and aunties in the family didn't read music at that time, especially during the Second Year War. And they didn't learn how to read music until after the Second Year War. But my father gave me a cornet, and I was in elementary school. I used to carry my cornet to school every morning and play the flag up. And when the school let out, I played the flag down. Like I said, my father never taught me how to play the trumpet, or anybody in the family for that matter. We just all in the family learned the same way the first generation did. That was Sly and all them and his brothers and sisters, and taught by our grandfather, their father. So they didn't learn to read, but they could play just by ear. And that's what they did. They kind of like rehearsed their songs and their different parts, and they put the band together from my grandfather. And that's how that happened. And it kind of kept repeating itself with the second generation, which is me and my cousins. So we didn't learn how to read neither. So that continued on for quite a few years until I got ready to go into high school, and I still couldn't read. But they didn't require us to do any whole lot of reading or sight reading, nothing like that. They just want you to learn the melody of songs and be able to play these parades and jamborees and things like that. So that's how that came about. And drafted into the military, which was 1961, I took my basic training out here at Fort Leonard Wood. In my 8th week, I think, of basic training, they had a band on post there that was a post band, and they send those musicians over to talk to anybody that may be interested or maybe had some kind of musical background. So that's how I got to go back to that particular post for that different sort of training. So I had to go to an audition, and the audition became kind of strange to me because I knew I couldn't read, so I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get through this audition. And the guys and that was giving me the audition with the CO and the first sergeant and all of them, they had me in their office and they asked me to play certain things, like certain scales, and I did that because everybody can memorize scales. And that was one phase of it. Then they asked me, but let's check my sight reading. And I knew I couldn't sight read because I couldn't read at that time period. They said, well, we're going to check it anyway. And so they put this piece of music on the stand, and they asked me to look it over and let them know when I was ready to go ahead and start playing. So I looked it over, and I knew I couldn't read the music, but I looked and saw certain things like the sharps, all the flat that was in the key that it was in. And the main thing I saw, the title of the song was "Come Thou Almighty King," which actually a song I learned probably in kindergarten or watching Sunday school or something. So I knew that song inside and out. So they can say, well, okay, Mr. Hampton, are you ready to perform? I said, yes, sir. And so they counted off, and I started playing. It's a nice, slow, church-type ballad, so it wasn't nothing really to do. And they thought I was really sight reading, but I wasn't. I was just playing by memory. And so they didn't really know, and I didn't tell them any difference. So I was accepted in the band program in the military.
I always ask about albums that would sway folks when they're younger, and obviously growing up with Slide and Lionel, you had to be enormously inspired by their playing and their influence over you. What kind of memories do you have growing up with them and what they taught you and how they really got you involved in jazz?
Well, Slide has been the most famous we have even to this day. When Slide was about 15 years old, he was writing music as he basically trying right now, or rating he's doing now. So he was the youngest of all the siblings. So we kind of admire from what he was able to teach himself, or even some schooling he got from the Jordan Conservatory back home. So that was the thing. I used to listen to him and his brother, we call Mayshaw, his real name is Bill. He played trumpet, and him and Slide used to play together a lot of gigs around town. I noticed when they were young, they used to be in the basement of where we was living at, and they'd be running over these songs and listening to records and playing on a record before they go on town that night and start performing. That was one instance that I remember. And the Baston family was just doing what they regularly do, learning their songs and putting the big band together. It was the family band. But if you had the chance to talk to some of the older generation, that first generation, they would tell you that we're not jazz players. They were just entertainers. And they'd tell you that's what they was all about. They were entertainers. Because grandfather had them doing a lot of things besides trying to play swing music or jazz. Jazz was not a big thing for them at that time. They were coming along because he had them performing when they were 3 and 4 years old on the road as little kids of the first generation. Because granddad and grandmama, they had 12 kids. They lost 3 of them. So they raised 9.
Wow.
And that 9 is only 3 of them left now. And that's Slide, the youngest, Mayshaw, the next oldest, and Dawn, who lives in New York. And Dawn used to play alto sax when she was younger, but she don't do that no more. And she's in not good health right now. But Dawn had a lot of experience singing and dancing all around the world. And She was in a few movies, so she's in the Malcolm X movies and things like that. Even myself, when I was in the military, and I was living in Georgia at one time after I retired, and I used to go over to Tuskegee and play with people over there at the time. And the thing I kind of forgot about it, but it kind of went back to my mind as I got to thinking about it. I played a gig over with Spike Lee's auntie. Her name is Consuelo Lee. She used to play keyboard, and she used to teach at a lot of universities there. And that, I thought that was something really to think about. You play with somebody like that had that kind of stature. John Lee was Spike Lee's father, played bass. I never got a chance to meet him, but I didn't get a chance to meet Spike Lee, but I played with his auntie.
Right on. So let me talk to you about your 21-year career as an active duty military musician. You went all over the world, had many experiences. What was that like for you?
The music part of military life is great. And that other stuff, you can keep that. Because that's never been well, when you're an entertainer or musician, you don't think about wars and all them kind of things. You think about the love of music and what you're doing, and you consider yourself pretty fortunate to be a musician or entertainer of some sort. A lot of people like to be, and you'll find people come up to you and say, "Could you teach me to play like you?" Or I wish I could play like you and all that. I said, "No, I'm a certain person. I don't do things a certain way." I said, "Now, I can teach you maybe fundamentals, but you're going to play you. You're going to perform as you. You ain't going to perform like me." I love Freddie Hubbard. I can't play like Freddie Hubbard.
Absolutely. The one thing that I noticed, too, that your family opened up the Hampton House of Jazz. Talk to me about how that came about, what that was like.
It was me and my third wife, my last. When I retired and I moved to Florida, my wife and I had different things that we did, and she was a great cook and things like that, and she did a lot more things than that I can take a lot of time to tell you about that. We won't go into that, but she was a great cook, and her mother was, and father, and all her family was really pretty good involved when we put this thing together, because we met her both were trying to put our business together, but we couldn't find a place in Florida that was really reasonable as far as money goes and things that had to be changed for what we were trying to do. So what my wife said, "Why don't you just play in your backyard?" I said, "What you mean play in my backyard?" "Well, get your little groups that you play with around Florida and bring them to the house and have like a little picnic in the backyard and let them go and play some jazz." So that was a thought. I said, well, I never really thought about that. So I decided to go ahead and do that eventually. Eventually, it grew to be very big. I started with maybe about 20 people in my backyard, and then I to my wife decided that we should have a 3-day jazz festival. So we put that in the backyard. So we ended up with 300 people in the backyard, 65 musicians, two big bands, and Slide was in town that I didn't know at the time. That they brought him to the backyard, and we just had a ball, man.
Right on. That sounds like it, man. Let me ask you about your Kansas City years. When you came to Kansas City, what was the scene like, and what has it been like to be involved with the Kansas City jazz scene?
Well, Kansas City, for how I got to Kansas City, I was starting back cross country. And I know I hadn't seen my good friend and his wife. I knew them in Europe because we used to in the same band together over there about 30-some years ago. And so I said, let me call him and see how he's doing, because I was close by. So I called him, and I arrived here at their place where they were staying, just a guest house that they were staying at the time. And it was about 12 midnight, so it was actually August the 1st, but 2013 when I saw them again. That's how I came to be in Kansas City. Other than that, I'd probably be still on the East Coast. So expensive living.
Yeah. Well, so now that you've been here for some time, talk to me. What do you think is the greatest thing about Kansas City as far as our scene in this city?
I don't know how you would say the greatest thing, but I know one or two of the good things. I mean, people in this area are very polite. They see you on the street, they acknowledge you, and they might wave at you or say something to you. That's one thing good about it. The other thing good about it, you don't have nowhere near the traffic when it comes to driving around here. You go on the East Coast, man, you might start out to your house or going to your job. It probably take you 2 or 3 hours to get to your job, which it ain't probably maybe about 15 miles from your house.
Yeah.
Got so many people driving. They don't care about you. I mean, everybody's me, and they are all into themselves. So you got to be careful what you do up around all them people.
Yeah. You know, the one beauty of being in Kansas City is that 18 and Vine, and obviously around the Blue Room, there's such a history of jazz that's gone on. Let me ask you this. If you could get into a time machine and see anybody, who would you want to go see, and where would you go to see him?
I'm probably like to think of, and they're not famous, and this is kind of like when you get a certain age and you lost all your relatives, or most of your relatives, like your father and your mother, or grandfather and grandmother, you wish they were still alive.
Yeah.
So you can measure the accomplishment and you can see what they really thinking about. Because there's a lot of things that even like, for instance, like if I tell you about everybody that's living today, especially here in the United States, I bet you none of them would never imagine that we're going to have our first black president. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I can use that for analogy. That, it's the same thing that you had people in your family that you never got a chance to really know, or they didn't get a chance to know you.
Yeah.
So we just had a family reunion about a month ago now. The family has grown to a humongous size. They're probably bigger than the Austin family, I would say. That's how big it is, man, because we only got 3 people left now that come out of that first generation. That's Slide, the youngest, and Mayshow, we call, and his real name is Bill Hampton, who played trumpet. He's about a couple of years older than Slide. Slide's 84, and so they count 86, 87. And Dawn, who's the oldest of the last first generation, she's the baby of the girls, and she's 88, and she can hardly walk, so she's not in real good shape no more. But their spirits are up. They still have the great feelings about certain things they deal with in life.
So let me ask you a general question. You come basically from jazz royalty, a very long lineage of jazz. You spent your life playing it. So let me ask you this. It's a simple question. Why do you love jazz?
I love jazz mainly because how jazz was introduced to me, for one. I got into jazz. I think about jazz as one of the most powerful entities that we all have to deal with. Whether we like it or not. You hear jazz every day. You hear the improvement of music and different other kind of music. And a lot of it came from jazz, because jazz is so innovative that it keeps you going, and you never stop learning, especially when you come to something like jazz, which I consider the hardest music in the world to play, because you have to do so much at one instance. You don't have a whole lot of preparation sometimes, and you have to just go with what you might experience and what you know.
So let me ask you this. Of all of the gigs that you've played in your life and all the fans that you've played for, what's one of the nicest things that someone has said to you after a gig or after listening to one of your discs? What have they come up to you and said?
Let me think for a second. What could they just say to me? The first thing they hear is sound. You sound good. If you don't sound good, I don't care what you play, it don't mean nothing, man. In the same way, if you play some music and you don't play with any kind of feeling or any kind of strong expression, people don't get it. And you probably don't get it neither, because if you're not expressing it, then maybe longer you don't get it neither.
Yeah.
But music, to me, if it's not happening that way, then you haven't done your job. It's not music. It seems to be music to me. It's more like noise. You can hit something on a tuning bar, and you're gonna get a musical sound, that particular pitch, And I tell you, all the great musicians that you listen to that playing, why they're great, because the fact that they are expressing their innermost being of themselves, which is how they feel about what they're doing. And if they can convey that with that feeling they have within themselves, then you're going to have a hell of a performer that's got a lot to say. And I think we all got something to say. It's just how we say it.
So this is my final question. I want to ask you, when the world of jazz opens that proverbial book, I know you got a lot more left in you, but when they open up that book and they see your name in it, how do you want the world of jazz to remember you, your legacy, so to speak?
I would say mainly someone that was trying to keep that particular artistic thing alive. because I think it's very important about not only jazz, but it's just like you take jazz and you try to keep that going, like you try to keep history going. I mean, you don't have all this history, then you just say, well, it's like what they did maybe some years ago where they had all these books and they try to get rid of all the books because they want everybody to know certain things and they want to have control.
That's perfect. That's a great way to wrap everything up. Marcus, thank you for your time. Good luck
You're
with the show. Good luck with the show on Friday, man.
We're going to have fun, man. I hope you be there and enjoy it, too.
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Marcus for his time, his honesty, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store or visit the neonjazz.blogspot.com for all things Neon Jazz. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.